Why Now? With Jenny Critchlow. And hello everybody, and welcome to the brand new weekly podcast with me, Jenny Critchlow, talking about all things to do with living presently, being quiet inside, finding some inner calm, and looking at how human beings work. So over the next few weeks or maybe even years, if you'll stick with me that long, we'll cover topics such as how the human ego works, how our mind works, and how the internal landscape that we creates our experience of the world around us. And well, more and more people are understanding it now. It really is phenomenal how many of us are starting to notice that our inner lives are the direct experience, the way we experience our outer lives or the world around us. So that's what this is about. I'm hoping over the weeks and possibly years to come, I wonder how many times I'll say that, the weeks and possibly years to come, we might have some interviews with people who've changed their internal landscape, and their external landscape hasn't necessarily changed at all, but their life has changed from doing this kind of work. There will definitely be a theme every week, and hopefully something to leave you with over the next 7 days. And so at the end of this podcast, hopefully there'll be a message, and in that message will be an invitation to you to start looking at something a little bit differently this week, or maybe even doing something a little bit differently. It depends what comes out in the flow. So welcome, as I said, I'm Jenny Critchlow, and this is the first of a weekly podcast, all the way from Warwickshire in England. So what are we going to look at today? Well, as it's the first in the beginning, and some of you may have seen me from my YouTube channel, or may even know me in person. If you don't, what you won't know is my passion is understanding and helping people to understand and living for myself, not only trying to live presently, but really understanding that my life is my responsibility, and understanding that only I live with me. So let's start this week with asking a question of you. What is it like for you to live with you? Note the dramatic pause, obviously, because let's do drama and jokes. There might be some funny in this podcast. I hope so. I did say to my husband, oh, you know what, I could do a joke of the week, and he went, no. Okay, I'm not so good at the canned jokes, but we will try and get some good delivery in there, so it's not constantly, are you breathing? And if you're listening to this in the car, hoping you don't fall asleep. So the message will come at you, and then you get to practice whatever you've taken from this podcast over the next 7 days until the next one, till you tune in next Monday morning. So what is it like for you to live inside you? How are you doing in there? Because for most of us humans, it's at best a bit chaotic. And for many of us, quite tough going. What is it like for you to live inside of you? And understanding that the invitation through listening to these podcasts starts with an invitation just very simply to notice. So you may find as the weeks or years go on, is that more and more I'm just asking you, and I'm asking myself, to begin to notice what is. Because most of what's in our head is fantasy. Even if it really happened in the past, it's still not now. And what we find when we begin to notice what goes through our head is it's not that much fun, really, let alone peaceful or serene or kind. it actually isn't that much fun. And so much of our lives is insanely hilarious. Our insanity, I think, is hilarious. And I bet you'll get there one day where you suddenly find your mind ridiculous. But at the moment, I'm just asking you to notice that you have a mind or you have thoughts. And if you can notice that you have a mind or you have thoughts in the mind, you cannot be the mind or the thoughts. You are very simply the noticer of the mind or the thoughts. So here's a lovely little exercise to do right now. And if you're driving, don't shut your eyes, please. Although I did have a friend, and once, when you're on a motorway, and at the edge of the motorway by the hard shoulder, there's those rumble strips that when you go on them, they go like that. And she thought they were for blind drivers to keep them on the road. So obviously, if you're on a motorway and those rumble strips are there, you have got a last minute warning system, but best not to shut your eyes for this exercise. And it's only a few seconds anyway. Okay, so if you can safely shut your eyes, if not, don't. And then just sit and don't think anything about yourself. And if you're not thinking anything about yourself, who are you? In that silence, who are you? If there isn't a thought about you, who do you think you are? And it's that bit of you, that observing bit of you, that starts to become more powerful and more present, and more of the leader in your life when you realise that if you really notice what is, a lot of what's going on for you, the chaos, the stress, the worry, is a thought about something. And actually, what is now, what is present, what you can notice, is rarely more than challenging. I'm not saying that awful things don't happen. That's certainly not where I'm coming from at all. We're looking at everyday life being more peaceful. And so you simply notice, where are you right now? What can you see? What can you hear? What can you touch? Is there anything truly awful about this moment now that isn't a thought about this moment now? Just as when you're not thinking, is there anything truly awful about you? In that peace, perhaps you can begin to feel it. It's almost like a rising of something that's always been there and hasn't changed. It's simply the thought within us that we are slave to that stop us experiencing the peace that is who we truly are, this observing presence. And that is the key, I'm afraid. It's that simple. It's like Dorothy and her slippers all the time. She had the means to go home all the time. That is the key, is that what we want is we say we want anyway is world peace, everyone to be kind to each other, everybody to love each other, and we want to be okay. And that is the secret of all human beings, actually, which is, again, very, very simple, is that all any other human being wants in their lives is to feel better than now. And we think there is a future moment where we will feel better than now, and there may well be. But when we're talking about long-term serenity and peace, we mean really internally to shush the mind up with all of its thoughts that drive us mad, to live with this self that constantly gives us this torrent of abuse around ourselves, other people, the past, the future. There is a peace there. when we get that those thoughts aren't us and those thoughts aren't real. And so, how are you doing in there? What's it like for you to live with you? And the invitation is to notice it. This week, you're going about your business, and you realise you've been completely and utterly unconsciously lost in your thoughts. Just notice what those thoughts were. Most of us have a theme for our thoughts, the same incidences or people from the past, or who owes us an apology, or where we want to go, or what we're going to do at Christmas, and why someone's annoyed us, and why the car in front isn't doing what we want them to do and hasn't second guessed and read our mind that we want them to do whatever it is they're not doing. Notice. And in that moment of noticing, you may be able to catch a glimpse, a chink of the peace underneath it that is very simply waiting for you to notice. And that is it. Have a wonderful week. The theme for this week, I said there'd be a message. Should we call it a message or a theme? I don't know, it'll evolve. The message, the theme is notice. Notice what is rather than what is fantasy. And see for yourself what little changes happen when you do that. And I look forward to welcoming you all next week. And thank you for listening for the very first weekly podcast with me, Jenny Critchlow. See you next week.